Recently, we asked you PC gamers what you wanted reviewed next, and 68% of you chose this gaming PC. After spending thousands of hours over the past year testing and reviewing many gaming PCs, I've got some very helpful personal insight that's going to help you decide if it's right for you. This is our 100% honest and unbiased review of the Starforge Voyager 2 Elite. This configuration that we have here for you includes an Intel i9-14900K CPU and 4090 GPU. I'm going to quickly take you through the unboxing and what's included, gaming and creator benchmarks, design and build quality, the internals, thermals, fan noise, overall ease of use, pricing breakdowns and comparing its price to performance ratio against the competition, and my overall top likes and dislikes. If you decide against this PC after anything that I say in this video, just keep watching because I'm also going to be sharing with you some alternative PCs that I recommend for every budget. I'll include links down below for all the products that I mentioned, as well as tagged directly on this video. I guarantee that by the end of this video, you will know if this PC is right for you or not. But if you still have any questions after watching this entire video, just shoot me a comment, and if you're publicly subscribed, I guarantee a personal response. But first, let's rewind back into the past real quick and check out what came in the box. First thing you'll see when you open the box is this PSU accessory bag. In here we've got some PCIe, SATA, and Molex cables, and your GPU power adapter. And inside our small Starforge accessory box, we've got your main PSU power cable, MSI Wi-Fi antenna, and a quick start guide. Step 5 tells you to enjoy the best computer in the universe. And we've got our custom acrylic plate lights. Pretty excited to try these out and see how they look in person. And then in what looks like a keyboard box, we've got an anti-sag bracket for your GPU. This is actually getting increasingly more and more important as graphics cards keep getting heavier and heavier. And then we've got a little box with some extra screws for the case, a Lee & Lee emblem, a handy installation manual for the case, and some more brackets. These are actually 420 mounting brackets. Yes, this case actually supports a 420mm radiator at the top. When it comes to design, this pre-built is actually pretty incredible. I mean, the case they built it from is one of the most popular, the 011 Dynamic Evo RGB. I've personally always really loved cases that have this panoramic wraparound glass design, and to make it look even better, you can actually take out this corner bracket if you don't really need the extra stability and you're just going to keep your computer in one spot for a while. You can see we've got some really nice thin RGB strips accenting the top and bottom edges, and obviously the main feature that sets this pre-built apart from anybody else and actually makes it stand out is this interchangeable acrylic plate light, which is actually illuminated with 100 LEDs across a large diffusion plate. There's also a whole bunch of other print options on their website if you want to change it up. Some of them I really liked, so I bought a couple extra. I actually would have paid even more if they let me use my own picture. In total, we've got 6 bits power 120mm RGB fans on the top and bottom. The top 3 are part of our custom Starforge AIO liquid cooling system for our CPU. I really love the look of that water block with that infinite LED just fading off into the distance. To the right of that, we've got our 6000 megahertz T-Force Delta DDR5 RAM. We've got 2 sticks of 32 for a total of 64. Then underneath that, below this metal heatsink, our main SSD that our operating system is installed on, which is a T-Force Cardia 2TB drive. And then below that, the most significant part of this build, our PNY GeForce RTX 4090 GPU. When I took it out, this little washer fell out of it. I really hope I didn't need that. Anyway, this thing is absolutely massive. Just look how it dwarfs my Founders Edition 4080 Super. And then behind the GPU along the edge of the motherboard, this is something that I think should be included across all PCs with GPUs larger than 4070s. A GPU bracket on the motherboard to prevent sag. No screws needed, you just need to press this button on the side and slide it up until your GPU is secure. Then behind this number 2 heatsink, our secondary SSD. As you can see in our tests, both were actually pretty fast. And then under the number 3 and number 4 heatsink, even more SSD slots. slots for a whopping total of 4 SSD slots for high-speed storage. All of this sits on an MSI Mag Z790 Tomahawk Wi-Fi motherboard. And thankfully, even with this massive GPU taking up all the space, we still have 2 more PCIe slots available for any expansion cards that you might want to add. And then spinning around to the back and removing that panel, right here is where we can flip a quick lever to take out the acrylic panels. Then on this little side door, we have 2 bays for installing 2.5-inch SATA SSDs. And then behind that door reveals the absolute best looking cable management that I've ever seen in a pre-built PC. Bravo. To the right of that, 2 slots for 3.5-inch mechanical hard drive bays for even more storage. And then lastly at the bottom, our 1000 watt MSI MPG A1000G power supply. And this is actually what they have listed on their website as well. Starforge is one of the only pre-built companies that does that. Hats off to them because most of them never tell you the actual brand of the component that you're going to get. They usually just go with whatever is currently available in bulk at a good price. For the ports on the front, we've got 1 USB-C and 2 USB-As and a headphone and microphone combo jack. And then up that front corner, we've got a brightness, color, and mode buttons for your RGB lighting effects, and then a reset and power button. On the back, 1 HDMI and display port directly connected to the motherboard just in case your GPU isn't working properly. A CMOS and BIOS button, 8 more USB-As and 2 more USB-Cs, a 2.5G Ethernet port, connectors for your Wi-Fi antennas, and your audio ports. And then on the back of your 4090 GPU, 1 HDMI and 3 display ports. Now for the software, like many other pre-builts with MSI motherboards, we've got the MSI Center. In here, you can view all the real-time stats for your CPU, GPU, and RAM. Mystic Light gives you some very basic RGB animations. And then the only other thing that I think is really useful here is the user scenario section. This is where you can set your fan profiles based on extreme cooling for better performance or silent for when your PC isn't running too hot. And then for those of you that want a lot more control over the fine-tuning and overclocking, there's plenty more you have access to within the BIOS as well. When it came to the fan noise, these are my results after testing each of the main fan profiles in a room with somewhat quieter than average ambient noise. In silent mode, it was about 41.5 decibels, which is pretty normal, but then during gameplay and performance mode, it brought the fan noise up to a whopping 46.5 decibels, which is one of the loudest sounding PCs in performance mode that I've seen. Normal game sound effects and music will drown it out though. Now for the thermals, you can see in our thermal imaging time lapse from computer off to full on gaming that as usual, we do get some heat built up on the glass right next to the GPU, as well as on the radiator above our CPU. Removing the side glass panel, you can see where the majority of the heat lies. I really do feel like there should be at least one more fan in this case. Unfortunately, the majority of the heat for this entire case has to pass through this radiator, which is already taking a lot of heat from the CPU. The majority of my testing was spent in actual gameplay though. These were our CPU temps for several different games at 1080p. You can see that this PC actually held its own pretty well compared to the others. And then averaging all 1080p gaming temperatures data together, you can see that it was actually a little below average overall when it came to the CPU temps. Then jumping into 4K gaming, we organized this chart by the GPU because high resolution gaming puts a lot more pressure on the GPU and less on the CPU. And this was actually about average for the GPU temps. It turns out the GPU getting directly hit first from fresh air from outside the case actually gave it a fighting chance to cool down despite the less than ideal airflow in this specific pre-build. Alright, now for the performance and gaming benchmarks, and up next, the most important part, the price to performance ratios. For Cinebench R23, which simulates its 3D rendering power, we got a multi-core score of 36,618 and a single core score of 2322. By the way, all rendering software can utilize multiple cores, so that's the most important score between these two. And you can see here that it's actually a bit above average compared to other similar spec pre-builts with i9s and 4090s. Another very helpful test for you 3D renderers is the V-Ray benchmark, and these were our CUDA, RTX, and overall V-Ray performance scores. The GPU rendering scores showed it to be near the top compared to everything else. This is an important score if you're doing a lot of high polygon 3D modeling or real-time viewport rendering and lighting. The overall V-Ray performance score though is a CPU-based rendering test that demonstrates how well a PC can handle the more advanced realistic rendering that takes a lot longer to calculate. And the V-Ray performance chart shows this PC to be slightly below the median next to other similar spec pre-builts. And the last set of benchmarks for creatives before we get into gaming are the Puget Benchmarks. For DaVinci Resolve, we got 3340, which is quite a bit above average. Adobe Premiere, 14,175. There should be a lot more computers on this chart, but recently I had to trash all of my results because Puget just completely changed the way this benchmark works. So it shows it being near the bottom here, but that really doesn't mean that it was bad. It just means the other pre-builds performed slightly better in this program. In Photoshop, we got 9420. This also appears to be slightly behind the rest, but honestly, you don't need a very powerful computer for Photoshop. Unless you're getting into some very heavy AI effects that you want to happen instantly, then maybe. Even my 1 GB Photoshop file with a lot of high resolution layers had absolutely no problem with this PC. For 3D Mark, which is a great benchmark used to predict a computer's overall game ability, we plugged in these overall graphic and CPU scores into our master chart, and you can see here that it ranked a little lower than expected. Slightly below average overall, mainly due to a weaker than expected GPU score. Actual gaming benchmarks are probably what you guys care the most about though. We took the many hours of testing from those games and averaged the FPS against the competition, and here you can see with 1080p gaming, it did just below average in its i9 and 4090 category. And then averaging all of those gaming FPS together gives us an even broader overall perspective on how this PC stacks up against the competition. 283 average FPS at highest graphic presets on all of these games is pretty satisfactory, but you can see a few others above it did just a little bit better. Then in our 1440p tests, you can expect about a 10% drop in FPS. Our average was about 256 here, again below average for these specs. And then checking out the FPS for each game individually at this resolution, you can see that almost every game is still hitting at least 200 FPS. In 4K, our average FPS dropped an additional 30% with an average of 178 FPS. And then breaking it down game by game shows that we're still above 100 FPS in every game except for Cyberpunk. So the price to performance ratios. Right now at the time of this recording, this PC costs a whopping $4,500. But for the most up-to-date pricing, check out my links down below or this QR code if you're watching on a TV. Unfortunately, the dollar per FPS ratio ain't great with this one. The second worst price to performance that we've seen yet. The only one that beat it was that Origin PC Genesis with a water-cooled GPU. And same thing with the performance value when gaming at 1440p. And then in 4K, it had the second highest dollar per FPS ratio yet again, but at least at this resolution, it slid back and blended in with the rest just a little bit more. Overall, I do feel it is a little overpriced, even with that beautiful acrylic plate light, the near perfect cable management, and 2-year warranty. Most PC brands only offer one. The current best deal that I've seen so far for a high-performing i9 4090 PC is that HP Omen 45L. As of right now, it's priced very well for those specs. Now, if you're at an entirely different price point, these are my recommendations for every budget. Remember, I'll have links down below in the comments and description for each of them, as well as tagged directly on this video, or a QR code if you're watching on a TV. If this PC that I reviewed for you today is a little too much, then I would go with the Corsair Vengeance i7 500. It's way less expensive and actually a better performer than this one. And just like Starforge, all Corsair PCs also have a 2-year warranty. The i7 500 is also the most purchased top-tier PC by my viewers. Third most purchased overall when factoring in the more affordable, slower PCs. It's basically what a large majority of you end up purchasing. If you just want the most bang for your buck i9 4090 combo, then like I said, that's going to be the HP Omen 45L. $2,900 for these specs is actually pretty insane. If you need to be under $2,500, then I would go with the Lenovo Legion Tower 7i. I reviewed the top tier version, which hasn't been in stock for the longest time now, but the i7 480 Super version is less than $2,400, which is a really good deal. For those with a budget closer to $2,000, hands down, not even a question, the Skytech King 95 with the 7800X 3D CPU and 4070 Super GPU. I recently reviewed this one, and for 1080p and 1440p gaming, it had the best price to performance ratio that I have ever seen. I'm still not really sure how Newegg is making money selling the PC at that price, because slower versions of this PC on Skytech's actual website actually cost more. My guess is that it's not going to be in stock at that price for that much longer. If you need to be closer to $1,000, then I would go with this CyberPower PC Gamer Extreme that I reviewed with an i5 and 4060. And if $1,000 is still too much, then I would get this exact version of the Victus by HP 15L that I reviewed with a 1660 Super and i5 for just a little over $600. But that's the bare minimum that I would recommend for semi-decent low settings gaming. If you're coming from a console like an Xbox Series X or the PS5 and you want your graphics to at least match that, then you'll need a PC with at least a 3060, or in this case a 4060 GPU, which then you'll need to bump up the PSU to 500 watts and also bump up your RAM to 16 gigabytes, which brings the price of this one up to just a little over $800. Overall, I would say this is a great high-end PC, but I honestly can't say that it's a good deal. Double the warranty, double the storage of most pre-builts, a borderline artistic cable management, and a beautiful plate light graphic, that just doesn't make up for that really expensive price point, in my opinion. If you're a baller, then sure, get it. It's weird, this PC actually had a lower price when they they announced it on their YouTube channel about a year ago. And now they're actually using their own fans, not ones from Deepcool. So they've got to be saving even more money with that. But yeah, if you do plan to get it, be prepared to wait. This was the longest that I've ever had to wait for a PC, especially when it's not even holiday season. 22 days for it to be delivered after I ordered it. And if you do decide to purchase this PC or any of the others that I mentioned, then please remember to use my affiliate links in the comments and description below, or tag directly on this video, or with this QR code if you're watching on a TV, as I get a small commission at no cost to you for every single purchase made with those links. And it's actually a major factor in keeping this channel going and getting better and better for you. Also, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with notifications turned on to stay up to date with all of my latest tech and gaming PCs. Thanks for watching. God bless.